So if I sound a little bit like Cobra Commander, it's because I had some teeth work and my S's are a little bit weird. Anyway, about 3 weeks ago, I did a tedious, ranty review of a study by Barbablho et al. On women looking at training volume and strength and hypertrophy. And I did it for a few reasons. One, because I wanted to look at it, because it had some interesting results. Two, to make a bunch of, let's face it, shitty comments aimed at Brad Schoenfeld, James Krieger, and Mike Israetel. Mainly at Mike, I guess, because it was coming out of that debate we did in February, but it was 4 months afterwards, and some of the nonsensical arguments that he used. But also I wanted to compare it to Brad's study to show that it is possible to do good methodological work. They blinded the ultrasound tech, the exercise specialists. They actually adhered to the statistical results. And when you do that, it's funny how you get different results. So last week, I did the follow-up study, same group, this time in men. Basically an identical study as far as design. It was a bonkers set count, a goofball workout. Didn't particularly care for the periodization scheme, but no matter. They did what they did. They did add another measurement halfway through the study, which I thought added a lot of strength to it because they were looking at a slightly different issue. And I'll let you read it if you want. And same results. And the results for both were that the low and moderate volumes were as good, if not superior, to the higher volumes. And, of course, this runs contradictory to Brad's study. And I am told that in response to... And, again, I made the same kind of snarky comments in the men's write-up. It just wasn't as long. So I'm told, right, this is always secondhand right now, that Brad and James have both played well, Lyle has never brought up blinding in other studies. The same bullshit deflection Mike Israetel used, which is meaningless, and it's just pathetic excuse-making, because it's got nothing to do with it, right? Previous studies are not on trial. I'm not on trial. My website is not on trial. I'm comparing two very recent methodologically rigorous studies to Brad's, which is distinctly not. So that's just a guru deflection, but it's always easier to do that than maybe to acknowledge your limitations or maybe try to do better work, because God forbid you do that. And I just tangentially, I do find it sort of funny that the supposed evidence-based crew is what they're doing. And this is not just James and Brad, this is our whole crew of people. There are now 8 studies in men, I'm not going to count the women's study, looking at training volume, dose response, and excluding the Rodelli trash fire, which I'll always say is shit, because unless you want to tell me how a calisthenic group gained more muscle than the low volume weight training, and beginners needed like 37 to 45 sets to grow, it's garbage data, but whatever. And then there's Brad's study. And the other 6 show that low or moderate volumes are as good, if not better, than high. So we build scientific models based on the bulk of the data. And I enjoy that they're ignoring the 6 that form a very cohesive picture to hang on to the 1. But I guess when the author of the 1 is the guy that gets you $5,000 pop seminar appearances, that's the horse you got to back, right? And don't tell me I'm wrong. So this is all just a very long lead up into what this video is really about, right? So back in February, after I basically pointed out that all the evidence-based guys were just saying what I'd been saying all along, just 10 to 20 sets per week, Mike called me out for a debate. He wanted to sit down and discuss it, and I eventually did it. It was 90 minutes of a total waste of time, and that's also linked up on my website along with my debriefing. And because I did really make I did a lot of background work. I tried to really not only present my case directly, but also to answer any questions I was asked directly. And if you go listen to his answers, it's just politics. It's hemming and hawing and back and forth. And, well, there's strengths and weaknesses, and all you can really say, it's like, he didn't say anything, and go listen to it. And I'm sure I won't change anyone's mind, and that's great. But show me he made no direct answers. And apparently, and I also learned that Brad doesn't have to use proper methodology because you can trust him and he can't be biased, which is the funniest thing I've heard in a while. And that standard medical guidelines don't apply to exercise science, and they all have weakness. At which point, why use it? Don't even pretend to be evidence-based. Just go, all the research is shit. We're only going to use it when it suits us, and we're going to use anecdotes. Just go be a bro, right? Don't pretend to use science, because if 6 of 8 studies say one thing, we don't hold on to the one exception. Anyway, since Mike got to call me out, I feel that I have the right to make similar challenges. I'm going to make 3 of them. First one is to Brad Schoenfeld. right? Mr. You can trust me, I'm not biased, so I don't have to follow a good scientific methodology. And this is focused mainly on the ultrasound not being blinded, which should be standard operating procedure. And in his entire body of work coming out of his lab, he's never blinded a single study. The only studies that he's been on that were blinded were done by other labs, because I guess they know what they're doing. And for a man who supposedly teaches a research methods class to somehow be unaware that this should be done or how to do it is pathetic. I don't know if he's lazy, incompetent, or just wants to get the results that he's looking for, but it's pitiful, right? But I guess it's what they say, if you can't do, teach. So anyway, and Brad has been avoiding all criticism, using the same guru deflections, the same bullshit that everybody uses, although he's happy to criticize everybody else when they don't live up to him. But gurus always live by double standards. So here's my challenge to you, Brad, right? And this holds for everybody. If you want me to shut up, and let's face it, everybody who's tired of my shit, they want Lyle McDonald to shut the fuck up. They have for over 2 decades. Well, I'm going to tell you how to do it. I'm going to give you exactly what I want. And if you do that, I'll shut the fuck up. Brad, blind yourself on the next study. Blind yourself to who's in what group. It's that simple. Although apparently it's not, because you haven't been able to do it over the dozen or so studies you've done on this topic, right? It also doesn't cost any money, right? Because James's big defense was, science is expensive and science is hard, right? I know these things, James, but blinding is free. And if science is too hard for you to do right, maybe you should pick a different career. But don't make excuses that it's hard. Because if it's too hard for you, do something else. And like I said, blinding is free. So Brad, blind your next study. I hope it's on training volume dose response. And here's my challenge, and here's what I will tell you. If you blind it, blind yourself to who's in which group, and get the same results, or even similar results, that actually are within the statistical parameters that you chose initially, right? The statistics actually support it, and I'll come back to that. I'll be the first to admit I was wrong about you, about maybe your previous study, although I doubt it. Not blinding always introduces the potential for bias. But I'll be the first one to say, hey, Brad Schoenfeld stepped up. He did it right. His results are what they are. Put it on my website. I'll put it on my Instagram and stop making shitty dad jokes. That's what I'll do if you step up. I'd also add to that, because this is also free, register your paper with clinical trials. You've never done that either. And so let's face it, we know you're not going to do either of these things, because if you were going to do them, you'd have done them by now, rather than make lame-ass excuses, which is all you've been doing. They're both free, and they'll both shut me the fuck up, which is what everybody wants. Because, see, that's the thing. If you make a mistake, and we all make mistakes, you acknowledge it, you fix it. And on that note, Greg Nuckols is listening to this. Greg, I saw you and some other dipshits criticism, the FMIP, something about not adhering to this. The statistics either count or they don't, which is hilarious, because apparently that only works for every study but Brad's. I fixed it. You were correct. I went back and I fixed the article, and I even gave you credit for pointing out mistake, because that's what you do when you're intellectually honest. You don't make lame-ass excuses. I'd add to that, I've seen Greg crowing about his... oh, no, wait, I'll come back to that. Sorry. So that's my challenge to you, Brad. Blind your study, adhere to the statistics, and if you want to really blow my mind, register with clinical trials. All right. Challenge 2, and this is to James Krieger, who as a statistician is an okay men's fitness or physique competitor. So James ran the statistics and has been trying to defend how weak they are for months now. And maybe he's given up because he just won through exhaustion, but he never did acknowledge that they were crap. And I will review them quickly. According to standard frequentist methods, the p less than 0.05, for no muscle, none of the 4 tested, was the high volume better than the moderate volume? For 0. Now there's this recent thing to go, oh, we need to get rid of p less than 0.05 and all this. And there's problems with that method, and that's fine. Of course, Brad is on that paper, but it doesn't matter. If you chose that method for your paper, you have to live or die by it. They expect other papers to. They should be held at the same standard. So they did the Bayesian thing, which is more probabilistic. Now, for the upper body muscles, there was no support for high volume being better than moderate. And for the lower body, the 2 leg muscles, the BF10 value was somewhere between 2 and 3, but it wasn't higher than 3. Now, according to standard statistical texts, that is described as weak, anecdotal, not worth the bare mention. Right? If anybody else's statistics were that low on a paper Brad and James didn't like, they would dismiss them, rightfully. But in the case of this study, they are being defended. Now, Brian Butcher, who is a fantastic statistician, or has enough of a background, he taught my dumb ass for the debate. And if you can teach me statistics, you're a better man than most. Wrote a very long analysis of the statistics. It's on Reddit. I've linked to it. And as James was hemming and hawing, one of the assertions that he made was, well, not all sources consider a BF10 less than 3 as weak. There's several things from this. If that source existed, that's what he should have cited in the paper. He cited Rafferty originally, and Rafferty describes it as weak. So you don't get to change after the fact, right? If it wasn't in the paper, it doesn't count. For the same reason that James throwing new statistical analyses at this data doesn't count. For the same reason pulling a leg extension volume load doesn't count. If it wasn't in the paper, you don't get to pull it out later. That's not how science works. And they wouldn't let anybody else do it. But more importantly, he never provided that source, right? So if it exists, the obligation is on him to provide it. Right? When you're arguing with some dude online, he goes, well, I have research that says this, and you go, then show it to me. The onus is on him to support it. And if he can't, what do bros usually do? Oh man, I don't have time for this. Do your own research, which means it doesn't exist. Right? Somebody asks me for a paper, I can usually find it in about 30 seconds. So anyway, James asserts that this exists. Show it. He also said, this is great, he also said that the BF10 just wasn't strong, or something roughly to that effect, which is such weasel language. It's like describing someone who's dirt poor as just not rich, because it changes the way it sounds. No, weak, anecdotal, not worth the bare mention. But that's my challenge to James. James, if you claim that this source exists, standard reference statistical source, provide it. Otherwise, admit that it was a stone bluff, and let's call it was. You were lying. Because you know it doesn't exist. Because if it did, you'd have provided it by now. Send it to me. Scan the pages. Send it to Brian. Send it to somebody who can get it to me. And I'll say I was wrong. On my website, on my Instagram. Send me this supposed reference, or just admit that you're a liar. Because this is a bull-faced lie. All right. Challenge 3. I've been asserting since day one that the squat workout in Brad's paper, and others, the Barbablho paper, 1 week out of every 4, they're impossible workouts. No one can squat 5 sets of 8 to 12 to failure, right? It was listed as a rep max load on 90 seconds. It cannot be done. I dare say most of you listening to this have never done a single set of squats to failure deliberately. And by that I mean reps to failure, where failure is defined as either the last rep is a death grinder and you wouldn't have made the next rep, or you attempt the next rep, descend, try to come up, get stuck, and have to dump the pins or get spotted at the top. That's the set of squats to failure. And if you do that, you won't be able to get off the floor in 90 seconds, much less repeat it. And even if you can get under the bar again, you'll have to strip the weight by 50%. So do not tell me that that workout was possible. And again, the same thing holds the Barbablho paper, that 1 week out of every 4. They supposedly did 12 to 15 RM on 30 to 90 seconds, and that's an impossible workout. But if you think I'm wrong about this, send me a video. One unedited, straight video of, just show me you doing 1 set to failure, and I'll be impressed. Now get up in 90 seconds and do it again. Now do that 5 times. And I'll put the video on my website and say I was wrong and send you a book. So those are my 3 challenges. Brad, blind yourself to who's in which group in the next paper and register it for bonus points. James, provide this supposed reference showing that a BF10 of 3 is worth a shit. Oh, on that note, Greg Nuckols is crowing about either his thesis or a paper he was on with the BF10 of 150. Now, those are strong stats, and I really want to see it, to see what he did. But Greg is, while crowing about that, is still defending this BF10 of less than 3. And he said that Brad and James oversold it. And I'd say that's being generous, about as generous as the $5,000 pop seminar appearances that Brad is getting him. And you know I'm right. Because why else would he do it? You can't have it both ways. BF10 of 150 is huge. BF10 of 3 is anecdotal and weak, described by the reference James used, and actually the software he used too. But Greg has to defend the guy that makes him money. So, James, provide your source. Or admit that you were lying, because we both know you are. And finally, if anyone wants to disprove me about the squat video, do it. Send me the video. Send me that the squat workout can be completed. Because all y'all want me to shut the fuck up, and I just told you exactly how to do it. So, do it. Have a great day, guys.